In these crazy times, more people than ever are looking to get a second passport. But before you figure out which second citizenship or citizenships are the best for you and for your family, I always encourage people to look at all the different ways that you can obtain a second citizenship. You may not need to spend a lot of money if there is a way that you can go through some simple procedures and claim citizenship for practically free. And so today, I'm going to share with you 5 different ways that you can get second citizenship in 2021 and beyond. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson. I'm the author of the book Nomad Capitalist and the founder of Nomad Capitalist, where we help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where you're treated best. You can learn more at nomadcapitalist.com. So let's talk about how you can get a second passport. We've talked a lot about why you need one, and I think the reasons for that are more clear than ever. You want a plan B from your government. You don't want to be held hostage by just one country. You want travel freedom. You want flexibility, including from new up-and-coming tax laws, which I think will become more and more onerous, not just on Americans, but on countries, citizens all around the world. So the first question I will ask someone if I'm talking to them about a second citizenship is, do you have anyone in the family tree that qualifies you for citizenship? A lot of people have looked at citizenship by descent, but they don't always consider all of the ramifications. Do you have a parent, a grandparent, a great-grandparent, and in some cases even further back, that was a citizen of another country? Now, in many cases, you need to have what's called an unbroken chain, where the great-grandparent needed to pass citizenship to the grandparent, passed on to the parent, passed on to you. And so if someone became naturalized in a new country, they moved overseas, they lost their citizenship, wouldn't have passed on, that can be an issue. It doesn't necessarily apply in every case. One thing people don't do is they don't look at their parents. I've had people who, hey, my dad was born in Canada and grew up in Canada. Well, that could potentially work. I had folks who were born in Honduras, were born in Mexico, birth citizenship countries, where just being born in the soil means you're a citizen. And so sometimes, let's say an American will go down to Mexico, they'll give birth to a child, and then that child is Mexican citizen. And so if you are their child, even though you think, oh, my dad, my mom is American, they can potentially pass on that citizenship to you. So always look at that. Grandparents, great-grandparents, you can go further back. Obviously, a lot of European countries, people have ancestors from there. You could qualify. Now, this has become slower in 2021 and last year as well because of COVID, where even some of the faster countries like Ireland are really dragging their feet on processing these. So if you're looking for a second passport in 6 to 12 months, which is the most asked for time frame when people are coming to me right now, is 6 to 12 months, then that may not work. And it really never worked for a lot of the programs like Italy or Hungary or Poland, which often have snags attached. Some people spend 3, 4, 5, 6 years gathering documents and going through the process to get this. So if you're in a hurry, it may not be what you want, but it might be a nice kicker to add on to a passport you get first. Maybe you get a lesser quality passport through another method and add this one on later, or you're not in a hurry. Now, the second thing I'll tell people to check is your immediate family, your marriage and your children, kind of going the other way down the family tree. And so there are some countries where you can become a citizen by marriage even by not living in that country. I've seen, I believe France has some ways where you can register and you can work towards second citizenship if you're married to someone who is French. Most countries, if you marry someone, you get a residence permit in that country, or you have some pathway to citizenship, if citizenship is possible. Now, if you marry someone who is Chinese, for example, dual citizenship being banned, Chinese passport not being that great, you might not want to pursue that. If you marry someone who doesn't have a great passport, you might not want to pursue that. I knew someone who once got a second citizenship through Iran, not something that I would have recommended them to do. But if you have a partner who is from a country with a great passport or a good passport, it may be worth living there, especially if it's a tax-friendly place to live, or if you would like to live there. And you can put in sometimes the normal naturalization period, sometimes there's a fast track, and so you can get citizenship through your spouse. You can also look at your children. This is generally if you follow the birth tourism route, where let's say your children are born in Mexico. Again, the same example with Mexico or Panama or Brazil. You can at times then apply for residence yourself and get a fast track to citizenship by giving birth to a child. And so whether you do that intentionally or whether you just did it unintentionally, you could qualify that way through the child. These things don't happen instantly, and some people say, oh, I had a child that was born in the U.S. and then I gave up my U.S. citizenship. Can I come back? No, it doesn't work that way. But in many cases, you can use your family tree, your marriage, and your children to claim second citizenship. So those are the things that I would check first, because even though they may not be the fastest, they are pretty affordable. You might pay some legal fees. In the case of citizenship by descent, you're going to chase down a lot of documents potentially. There's going to be some cost in outsourcing that potentially that needs to be done in the country itself, in the archives, whatever. But those are things to look at. Now, the most common thing people are doing right now when they come to me is citizenship by investment. This is the third way, and again, the most common right now. This is where, in exchange for making some kind of an investment in a country, they're going to give you citizenship generally pretty quickly. And so the standard is approval in anywhere from 3 or 4 months up to a year and a half. I generally look towards the lower end of that spectrum for the most solid citizenship by investment programs. Anything that goes over a year to me starts to become a little bit different. But citizenship by investment is different than other things we'll talk about in that it is streamlined, it's commoditized, it's available to pretty much everybody with some basic exceptions. So you can go to the Caribbean, for example, and there are 5 different countries that will offer you citizenship by investment. Generally, the best way to do this is through a donation to the country. So it's not necessarily an investment. You are investing in their country in exchange for the passport, and then you're helping them build low-income housing or airports or whatever the case may be. So they're making the investment, you're just getting the passport. In the case of St. Lucia, there's a bond investment program where in exchange for a processing fee plus a bond investment at 0%, you can get citizenship. There are real estate options in which 9 times out of 10 or more I don't recommend. There are business options that just generally aren't good. So generally you want to go the donation route or perhaps the bond route. But the benefit of citizenship by investment is you're getting a passport very quickly. Again, it might take us a couple months to gather all the documents that we need, especially if you are from an English-speaking country. It shouldn't take that long. You want to put together a proactive case and then you want to file. And so in the matter of 6 to 8 months, you could have a passport in hand. Don't believe these 2 to 3 month things that you see on people's Google ads. That is the best case scenario for processing time, and it admits the fact that they're probably not being very proactive in putting your application together. That part might take a year, but when you file, fingers crossed, it might take 2 or 3 months. So the whole process should take somewhere from 6 to 8 months. In the case of the Caribbean, you've got 5 different programs starting at a $100,000 donation for a single, $130,000 for a family, and they go up from there, plus fees. The fees are not inconsequential. Now, you've also got other options, such as Turkey has a citizenship by investment, which is perhaps one of the most affordable programs to get a passport in 6, 7, 8 months right now, where you're just going to buy property, anything you want. So totally different than the Caribbean, where you have to buy from a list of approved properties, which are often timeshares or just not great deals, have low returns. In Turkey, you can buy in the open market. And while it's designed to incentivize buying from developers, there are a lot of bad deals from developers. And I often see people paying double what they should just to get the passport. So you want to make sure you're buying a good new build project from a developer if you want to pay the $250,000 investment. If you want to spend a little bit more to meet the appraisal, you can invest in resale property. So it has to appraise for the Turkish lira equivalent of $250,000, but the fees are lower than in the Caribbean. And so you're actually buying real estate. You can also put $500,000 in a Turkish bank, and whatever your investment is, you have to hold that for 3 years. So not a bad deal where you could potentially make more in profit from renting the property out potentially than you would from actually all the costs that go into getting the citizenship itself. Totally different experience, but same investment principle. And the third option are options in Europe. So right now, Malta is the only country in the European Union that has a program. Montenegro's outside of the European Union. They're shutting their program down. Moldova did the same. Cyprus did the same. But Malta's program, while they claim it's an exceptional program, it is commoditized and it is streamlined, available to everybody. Starts with a €750,000 donation if you want to get the whole job done in about 18 months or a little bit less. Plus fees, plus rent an apartment, plus do some other things. And the fees, even more than the Caribbean, because we're talking about Europe. So it's $1 million plus price tag for even one person. Then you start to add on family members, it becomes expensive. But what you're getting is really a passport that's as good as any other passport in the world, equivalent to the US, equivalent to an Australia, equivalent to whatever, and you have that instant EU access. Now, 18 months to me is pushing the guidelines of what a citizenship by investment is, but definitely meets most of the other criteria. Where I'm on the fence on is Bulgaria's program, which to me is a hybrid residence by investment, like a golden visa, citizenship by investment, even fast-track naturalization, where you're investing about €500,000 now, and then you can top that up a year later with another €500,000 in actual investment, same as Turkey where you're actually investing, rather than Malta and the Caribbean where you are donating. You can get that money back. So Bulgaria has a hybrid program. So that's citizenship by investment. And if you don't want to travel, if you just want to do it from the comfort of your home, that's probably the best option for you if you just want to put the money out. Now, perhaps the most common way that people in general get citizenship in the world is citizenship through naturalization. And so if you are, let's say, in the United States, you see on the news people who have lived in the U.S. for X number of years, and on July 4th, they have a ceremony down at the immigration office, and a bunch of people come in and they raise their right hand and they swear to be allegiant to the United States, and they become U.S. citizens. They're becoming naturalized. And so the difference between what they're doing and what you could potentially do is that they moved to the U.S., they learned the language, they put in 9 months or more a year in the country, they paid taxes there. And there are, of course, plenty of opportunities where you can go and do that overseas. You get a residence permit in a country through whatever the mechanism is, whether starting a business, marrying someone, putting money in the bank. I mean, there's endless ways to get residence permits in a country that residence will lead to citizenship, and if you actually live there, and if you actually speak the language. But there are ways, what we call paper residence, to spend minimal amounts of time. Maybe you need to learn the language, maybe you don't, maybe you can have a translator with you. So there are ways that in 2, 3, 5 years you can get citizenship with minimal time. Perhaps one of the better known examples of that is the Portugal Golden Visa program. I think this is often sold as something that's a little bit too easy. I think there are probably a few extra steps that most people don't know to take that they should to help what they're doing. But theoretically, you can spend as little as about 7 days a year in Portugal while making an investment to get in. So this is a residence by investment that becomes a pathway to citizenship if you can meet the same naturalization criteria as anyone else, which is learning a little bit of Portuguese, spending a little bit of time in the country. Maybe you have some connections. You buy a house, you invest in some funds. You can work towards citizenship in the EU. Same EU citizenship as Malta, but one is 18 months and one's going to take you, 6+ years. So that's an example of a paper residence in some sense. There are much cheaper paper residences in other countries that you could use. And then, of course, if you're just looking to be a nomad, there may be places where you can spend 4 months, 6 months a year. Some are tax friendly, some are not, and just work towards naturalization, whether it's Chile or many other places in Europe and in South America and Central America primarily. And so the last way, the fifth way people get citizenship, probably the most rare way, if naturalization is the most common, the most rare way is through some kind of fast track procedure. And so I'll give you an example. Steven Seagal went to Serbia and said, hey, I'm going to open a Taekwondo studio. So action star kind of fits the vibe of what the country wanted to put out there. And they said, okay, we're going to make this a press event. We're going to look good. Let's give Steven Seagal citizenship. And it became a big thing. Same happened in Russia. Same happened with Gerard Depardieu, who became a Russian citizen. And Vladimir Putin saw that as a media event to take advantage of the star's, being in the news about his tax issues in Europe at the time. And so, there are examples, and you can actually go and look where maybe 20 people a year will get citizenship. It may be the French guy, or maybe the guy who was Malian, I believe, who was living in Paris, who rescued a child who was going to fall off of a building. And he climbed up and he rescued the child. And the president, I believe Nicolas Sarkozy, granted him French citizenship. The president has the power to do that in some countries, not all, but in some. The president, the prime minister, in some cases a panel or the parliament, whatever it may be. And so if you can go and do something that gets you on the radar, it could be something business. And I've worked with people who have really significant businesses either out of the public eye or in the public eye, where you could go and talk to a politician, talk to people in the government and say, hey, we'd like to do this and that, here are our plans, and potentially get some ears and work your way up the chain to a legal decision. Now, let's be clear, this is not, I put some money in an envelope and a guy at the passport office prints out a passport. That's not what we're talking about. What we are talking about is you can go in some countries and look and say, in the last 5 years, 52 people have been given citizenship for, rescuing a failing factory, for example. And the local governor may say, hey, yeah, that would make me look good. It would save 50 jobs. And I'm going to recommend you to the council or the president's inner circle. And then if they agree, they're going to recommend you to the president, the prime minister, and then he's going to say, okay, here's your citizenship. These are often pretty expensive propositions because of the boutique nature. Again, could be anywhere from 2 a year to a couple dozen a year. It's much more hands-on than a citizenship by investment process, which is pretty streamlined, standardized stack of forms. There are some variants in each case, but it's not really a boutique, bespoke process. So you're going to pay a lot more, and you do need to bring something to the table besides just my $100,000, but definitely something to look at if you want something that is interesting. One example that's sometimes talked about is the Austrian, they call it a program, not particularly a program, but there are and have been opportunities in Austria. There are other countries who do it at a lower price tag. So those are 5 ways to get second citizenship in 2021. What I'd like to hear from you in the comments is which method of citizenship most appeals to you. That's a question I ask people. I think it's worth working through a lot more details before you make a decision. But at first glance, which method appeals to you? Leave a comment below. So people ask, Andrew, how do I get the most out of Nomad Capitalist? How do I begin my Nomad Capitalist journey? The first thing people do is they start right where you're at. They watch YouTube, they listen to podcasts, they read articles at nomadcapitalist.com. We've spent years creating thousands of pieces of free content so that you can get the vibe from someone who's actually done this, from someone who's actually been in your shoes. What they'll do next, they'll get a copy of the book. You can find it on Amazon. It costs a few bucks, and while it's not going to give you all the secrets, it's going to, again, give you more of the vibe. You're going to learn a lot of the things that I've learned. You're going to learn some strategies you can employ, and you're going to get a lot further in your journey. From there, if you are the 7 or 8 figure entrepreneur investor, you can go to nomadcapitalist.com. You can click Become a Client. We're pretty busy these days, but we have availability to help a limited number of people who want to create a holistic plan, something that I think is so important. So if you want to do that, go to nomadcapitalist.com, click Become a Client, learn more about how it works and how we can help you.